There's nothing more dangerous than a man with nothing left to lose. Andrew Kehoe, the man who bombed a school building full of innocent children, believed he had lost everything that mattered to him. His wife's health was failing. He was watching his partner slip away to mysterious illness that doctors couldn't identify. His neighbors had labeled him strange and difficult, slowly cutting him off from community. His farm was collapsing under the post-war agricultural crisis that devastated farmers across the country. As Nellie's health worsened, neighbors noticed his crops left to rot in the fields while other farms bustled with harvest. He was drowning in debt, buried under bills, and still expected to pay the school taxes every member of the township owed. But Andrew still had one thing, his ideals. He believed he was protecting his neighbors from government bloat and unfair practices that drained resources at a time when resources were already scarce. In his mind, he was standing guard against corruption, saving his community from financial ruin, guiding Bath toward what he thought was a better future. Instead, his noble mission earned him ridicule. His voice was dismissed, his principles cast aside. He thought he was defending fairness, but others heard penny-pinching lectures. The last thing he clung to, his guiding ideals, slid under the table, ignored, mocked, and left him with nothing to lose. And that's the thing about grievance. It doesn't erupt overnight. It seeps, it festers. Each small cut reopens the wound, hardening into something ugly, snarling, and hungry for vengeance. And Andrew was collecting grievances like antiques, polishing them, treasuring them, until they warped into violent fantasies. Make no mistake, I do not excuse Andrew Kehoe, but I do seek to understand him. Because until we recognize the themes at play in Bath and we see how they echo in modern violence, we'll keep asking the same questions after every mass killing and never get closer to answers. Kehoe's fatal error was elevating his ideals above the sanctity of human life. To him, his convictions mattered more than the neighbors and townsfolk who resisted him. His frustrations would be repaid in the blood of innocence. He didn't choose resilience. He didn't choose grace. He chose to defend his ideals at any cost, even if that cost was blood, including his own. And that's the danger. Narcissism and a lack of grace opens the door for evil, and evil never enters politely. It strips away nobility, warps conviction, and rebuilds what's left into horror propped up by self-interest masquerading as principle. We've seen it in workplace shootings. We've seen it in lone wolf terror attacks. The cause changes, but the rhythm is the same. Grievance, isolation, narcissism, violence. By the spring of 1927, Kehoe had hardened himself into that rhythm. He wired his farm, stockpiled explosives, and turned Bath Township into the stage for his final act. This is the conclusion of the Bath School Massacre, the making of America's first school bomber right now, on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark city landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes to bring you the story of what really happened. Welcome back to Crime to Burn. I'm April, a fire protection engineer, former firefighter, and apparently the kind of person who volunteers to wander through the twisted mind of a mass murderer for your listening pleasure.
And I'm having trouble remembering why I agreed to this.
You can be the emotional support human for this podcast by leaving us a 5-star rating and written review. Think of it like sprinkling breadcrumbs for future listeners, except, less Hansel and Gretel, more please validate us so the robots in charge of podcast charts notice we exist. Feel free to check out our website for links to Apple, Spotify, and all the other places you can find us, plus our Patreon. No pressure, it's just a way to escape the ads and unlock a growing library of unhinged bonus content if you're into that kind of thing. You can also shine your guiding light of excellent podcast taste even brighter by grabbing some official Crime to Burn merch in our spread shop. Links are in the show notes. And as always, we appreciate everyone who helps lead new listeners to our content by engaging with us on social media, X, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Your likes, comments, and shares are the social validation we crave, because growing an audience is incredibly hard work, and your interaction helps spread our content to new eyeballs, like Pink Eye, but less itchy and oozy.
You are the new proselytes of Pink Eye.
Finally, send us your case suggestions, episode feedback, personal fire stories, and notarized affidavits to include us in your will at our email at crimetoburn@gmail.com. That last one's optional, but not discouraged.
It's encouraged.
Our first Patreon sticker drop comes next month, and you have to have joined by September 30th to be included. So if you're considering joining Patreon at the $5 level, don't delay. And now we head back to Bath, Michigan. Last week we told you about Andrew Kehoe, a farmer in Bath who seemed to show signs of neurodivergence long before we even had words like that, said lovingly by someone who shares a lot of those same traits. As a kid, he preferred tinkering over the raucous troublemaking of other boys, spending his time alone, inventing, and developing a fascination with electricity. His mother died when he was a teen, and his relationship with his stepmother was about as smooth as 40 grit toilet paper. When she later died in a stove explosion, it was ruled accidental, but after the Bath bombing, people wondered if Andrew had rigged that stove himself in order to ensure she didn't usurp the inheritance of his aging father's farm. She was only 13 years older than Andrew and 2 decades younger than her husband. When Andrew married his wife Nellie, the couple moved to Bath and purchased a farm from Nellie's family on mortgage.
They bought the farm?
Yeah. But after the war, crop prices plummeted like Matt Lauer's career, and Kehoe's personal financial crisis deepened. When he fell behind on his mortgage, he became obsessed with the idea that the deal he'd accepted for the farm was a bad deal, and that his wife's family had swindled him into paying too much for the property. He was elected to the local school board and appointed treasurer, running on his sense of duty to voice opposition to the taxes levied to build, accredit, and maintain the school. Others on the board saw him as a miser. He frequently butted heads with Superintendent Emery Huck. The animosity between the two festered, and eventually, Andrew was responsible for reducing Huck's annual raise and cutting his vacation in half. For a time, he was even appointed to a vacant seat on the town council, a position where he failed to endear himself to the locals due to his outspoken and unwelcome opinions on how money was spent within the town. His ideas were so unpopular that they ultimately cost him his chance to retain the seat during the next election. Despite being years behind on his mortgage, Andrew began purchasing and stockpiling explosives, pyritol, and dynamite. Now let's hit pause on the narrative for a quick fire science sidebar, because understanding what Kehoe was working with makes the horror that follows much clearer. Pyritol was what you'd call a farmer's explosive. After World War I, the US government had mountains of leftover smokeless powder. DuPont found a way to package it, mix it with sodium nitrate and dynamite, and sell it in 50-pound crates to farmers for blasting tree stumps and boulders. Pyritol was cheap, accessible, and advertised as every man's demolition tool. But here's the key. Pyritol is a low explosive. That means when it goes off, the flame front moves through the material slower than the speed of sound. The bang is still dramatic, but it's technically called a deflagration. Dynamite, on the other hand, is a high explosive. Its flame front races through the fuel faster than the speed of sound, compressing the air around it and creating that destructive shock wave we picture when we think bomb. That's called a detonation. Deflagrations and detonations behave very differently. A deflagration usually needs confinement. Think of gunpowder in a bullet casing, or pyritol packed into a tight space. Only then does pressure build until the container ruptures catastrophically. Detonations don't need that confinement. The pressure wave is violent and immediate. So why does that matter here? Because Kehoe combined the two. When dynamite is detonated next to pyritol, it can actually push the pyritol into detonation, something it normally wouldn't do on its own. That means more energy released, more destruction, and far deadlier results. That's why, when the charges went off in the Bath School's basement, the North Wing didn't just collapse. Witnesses saw it lurch 10 feet into the air first, like the building was trying to take flight, before crashing back down and crushing everything beneath it. And that's your vocabulary quiz for today. Deflagration, low explosive, subsonic flame front needs confinement. Detonation, high explosive, supersonic flame front creates a shockwave, no confinement required. Don't worry, there won't be a test at the end. Kehoe's twisted genius was turning a farm tool into a much more destructive weapon by using dynamite to push the pyritol over the line into detonation.
That's hot.
And thus concludes today's fire science lesson. Now back to the story. As Nellie's health collapsed with repeated, extended hospitalizations, the strain on Kehoe's finances only worsened. Doctors couldn't pinpoint the cause of her mysterious illness, and every attempt to ease her symptoms seemed to fail. The medical bills stacked higher, the farm revenue dwindled lower, and the pressure mounted. Then came the foreclosure notice from the family attorney. It was meant as a formality. Nellie's family had no real intention of throwing her and Andrew off the farm while she was so ill. But Andrew didn't see it that way. To him, it wasn't paperwork, it was a betrayal. It was proof that even family had turned against him, and in his mind, it was the final blow. Because of Andrew's engineering aptitude and his miserly control over the school board spending, he often volunteered to handle maintenance jobs himself. That earned him something few others had, a key to the Bath Consolidated School, access at any hour. The perfect cover for a man quietly turning a schoolhouse basement into the stage for his revenge. On May 18, 1927, Bath Consolidated School erupted in an explosion that tore the north wing from its foundation. Glass rained down in glittering shards as brick walls peeled away and collapsed into heaps of rubble. Inside, classrooms caved in. Outside, parents sprinted towards the school in sheer panic, desperate to reach their children. As rescuers clawed at the wreckage with bare hands and farm tools, another horror was already unfolding just a short distance away. Kehoe's farm was burning, every building wired with pyritol and dynamite, set ablaze as part of his plan to leave nothing behind. Then came the final act. Kehoe drove his truck into town, parking directly in front of the school. Superintendent Emery Huck stepped towards the driver's side window. Witnesses say they exchanged only a few words, and then in an instant the truck exploded. Kehoe, Huck, and several bystanders who had been helping with the rescue efforts were killed in a blast that sprayed shrapnel across the chaos. When police descended into the school's basement searching for answers, they stumbled on something chilling. Unexploded pyritol and dynamite, fully wired for detonation. The realization hit fast. If the device had been set to a timer, the rescuers, still swarming the rubble, were standing on top of a live bomb. An evacuation was ordered. Terrified parents who had just begun to dig for their children were dragged back as officers and firefighters confronted a nightmare no one had trained for. This wasn't just rubble, this was a minefield now. Wires snaked into powder kegs that could still blow. It was 1927, there was no bomb disposal squads, no blast suits, no robots with cameras or remote claws. What they had were a few men with steady nerves, wire snips, and the grim knowledge that one slip of the hand would turn what remained of the Bath Consolidated School into a crater. Every bit of explosive they disconnected and hauled out, every wire they cut, was done against a countdown for the injured children that were still trapped inside the building. But the unexploded bombs in the basement weren't the only danger investigators had to worry about. That same morning, Andrew Kehoe had sent out a package, an ordinary wooden crate, the kind pyritol was once shipped in. On the side, he had carefully stenciled the name and address of a Lansing attorney and then dropped it off at the train depot. When word of the delivery reached, police panic set in. Was this another bomb? Officers scrambled to intercept the shipment and warn the attorney, terrified that Bath might just be the opening act. But to everyone's surprise, the attorney never got the package. Somewhere along the way, Kehoe's neatly stenciled address was misread. The crate rolled right past Lansing to the next town over. A station agent noticed the mistake, put it back on the train, and sent it rattling down the rail line again. So began a grim little farce, a potential bomb playing musical chairs across Michigan's rail system, while police chased after it, sweating bullets as it bounced between depots on trains full of oblivious passengers. When the package was finally intercepted, no one was eager to open it. Instead, it was buried overnight like a cursed pirate treasure, left in the ground until someone with nerves of steel agreed to pry it open the next day. I am not making this up. That is legit what...
I just think I might have checked out and I don't understand what just happened.
After the bombing, the guy that runs the railroad depot tells police, hey, this morning Andrew Kehoe came and brought a package to be sent to Lansing, and it's on the train on the way to Lansing.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's in it, but he used an old pyritol box to ship it. So the police are like, we got to get to Lansing and get that package. So they're trying to intercept the train. The train had already left Lansing. So they get there and they try to intercept the package. It never was delivered to the Lansing depot, and it took them a while to figure that out. Meanwhile, the person in the next town at the depot had realized that this box was supposed to get off on the last train and had put it on another train that was headed back to Lansing. And so the cops are running around the train yards trying to figure out what train this package is on so they can intercept it because they don't know if it's another bomb. So they finally get the package, but it's late when they get it. And so they decide, and I'm not making this up, that it's too dangerous to leave above ground for the night. And so they bury it in case it's on a timer.
Who dug the hole?
I don't know. They didn't tell me who dug the hole, but the police decided to bury it in their impound lot. And when they did, the great mystery fizzled. No dynamite, no detonator, no clever booby trap. Inside were the Bath School Board's ledgers and a letter from Kehoe announcing his resignation. That was it. Just a stack of financial records he had kept with obsessive precision down to the last misplaced penny. Even as he wired a school full of children to explode, Andrew Kehoe still couldn't resist balancing the books. That obsession with order makes his choice of chaos almost impossible to comprehend. And yet maybe it tells us something. If Kehoe truly believed the school was going to be obliterated, why bother with the ledgers? Why bother with ensuring continuity? Perhaps in his twisted logic, the bombing wasn't meant to erase the school at all, but to punish it, to leave a scar, not a crater. It was his way of saying, I was right, you ignored me, and now you'll never forget. It's a chilling paradox, a man who would obsess over pennies, but gamble away lives without hesitation. One theory is that the bombs planted at the school were never truly meant to kill the children at all. Just 2 days after the explosion, a school board meeting had been scheduled. Some have argued that Andrew's real target wasn't the students or even the building itself, but the board members he viewed as enemies of his ideals. If that's true, then his plan was grotesquely miscalculated. The devices went off during school hours, not during a board meeting. Whether by design or by failure, the result was the same. Dozens of children and teachers lost their lives, while the men Kehoe may have considered his true adversaries walked away untouched. As police cleared the explosives from the basement, the full extent of Kehoe's preparations came into view. He had been sneaking into the school at night, descending into the basement where the low ceilings and shadows cloaked his work. The basement had no lights, so anyone down there relied on flashlights. That gave Kehoe cover to drill holes, pack them with explosives, wire them to crude timers made from alarm clocks, and cover his work that would never be noticed in the dark basement. And remember, this was 1927. These weren't digital timers with long delay options, these were analog clocks. That fact raises serious doubts about the theory that Kehoe was aiming only for the school board. Unless some freak accident triggered the blast ahead of schedule, Kehoe himself would have had to have set the timers, knowing exactly when they would blow shortly after the school day began, while the classrooms were full of children. When investigators combed through the wreckage, they discovered an even darker truth. More than 500 pounds of pyritol and dynamite hidden in the school's south wing, fully wired and ready to explode, but never detonated. If those charges had gone off, the Bath School wouldn't have survived to tell the story. The entire building and every person inside it could have been erased in an instant. It's grimly ironic. Kehoe was meticulous with his bookkeeping down to the last penny, but in the end his explosives accounting was sloppy, and that failure, his one miscalculation, is the only reason the Bath School tragedy wasn't even worse. In the end, perhaps his only act of mercy was incompetence. Kehoe's bombs didn't level the whole town, but what they ignited was something else entirely. Within hours, Bath was no longer just a quiet farming village in Michigan. It was a national spectacle. Crowds began arriving before the rescue mission was even finished, clogging every road into town. The 15-minute drive from Lansing ballooned into a 4-hour crawl as cars lined up with passengers desperate to see the carnage for themselves. Mothers and fathers stumbled up the hill to identify the small bodies of their children, while terror tourists treated the scene like it was built for their entertainment.
Hey, f*** those guys.
Yeah. The national press descended almost immediately. Chicago and New York papers chartered airplanes to capture aerial photos of the devastation, racing to develop the images before the print deadlines. One plane even crash-landed, but both the pilot and photographer survived, the photos clutched tight like treasure. Some bold onlookers helped themselves to souvenirs, chunks of roof tiles, shards of glass, bricks from the collapsed north wing, pocketed like keepsakes from a roadside attraction. Others trampled through the ruins of the Kehoe farm, scouring the ashes for clues about the man who had lived so quietly among them while secretly plotting mass murder. And then there were the darker rumors. Whispers that someone had even snipped a piece of Kehoe's intestines from where they were tangled in the wreckage of his truck steering wheel, carrying it off like some kind of macabre trophy.
What the f*** did you say?
That's what I said when I read it. That's why I couched it as a rumor.
I literally deleted that from my mind because I couldn't deal with it. He did, what the f*** he did?
He snipped a piece of Kehoe's intestines that were tangled in the wreckage of his truck steering wheel.
Snipped?
Took a knife out of his pocket.
I thought you said sniffed.
Oh no, snipped.
I couldn't get my mind around it. I can't get my mind around that either. Like,
Both are terrible. One is terribler.
More terribler. Yeah, I concur.
Yeah. But Kehoe's explosive ineptitude revealed itself again at his farm. The one building left standing was the hen house. Investigators soon discovered why. Inside were explosives wired to a timer connected to cables buried underground that stretched back across the property. By chance or by error, the connection had failed, leaving the hen house untouched, while every other building on the property burned. The discoveries only grew more gruesome. In his barn, investigators found Kehoe's 2 horses. Their legs had been bound together so they couldn't escape the flames. These weren't just livestock to him, they were once valuable assets that he had actually tried to sell off in the weeks before the fire. One neighbor recalled that Kehoe first offered to sell him the horse, but at a price far higher than it was worth. When the man refused, Kehoe returned to his house weeks later with the horse, claiming he changed his mind and was just going to give him the horse. He was invited to stay for dinner that night, but after the meal, Kehoe pulled out a bill of sale, one that bound the neighbor to pay the very price that he'd already declined. Confused, irritated, the man stalled and eventually returned the horse, explaining he wasn't going to pay that price. Those same animals, too valuable to give away, too burdensome to keep, ended up dying in Kehoe's barn, collateral in his determination to destroy everything tied to his life. But the discovery of the horses paled in comparison to what investigators found outside the barn. On a cart piled with the family silver and a box of Nellie Kehoe's personal keepsakes lay a body, burned nearly beyond recognition. It was Nellie. At first glance, it seemed she had perished in the fire, another casualty of Kehoe's scorched earth finale. But when examiners studied her remains, they found something far darker. Her skull, though charred, bore signs of blunt force trauma. The question has haunted Bath ever since. Was Andrew Kehoe's first act of violence not against the school, not against his neighbors, but against his own wife? Historians and investigators have wrestled with the question of Nellie's death ever since. Some argue Kehoe killed her deliberately, that he couldn't bear to leave her alive to face the shame of what he was about to unleash, or that he saw her illness as a burden he could resolve before his final act. The blunt force trauma, they say, leaves little doubt. Others wonder if Nellie's death was accidental, perhaps the result of a fall or a seizure in the days before the fire. Her chronic illness had already weakened her, and if she had died suddenly, it may have been the spark that accelerated Kehoe's timeline. And then there are those who see her death as symbolic. The way her body was arranged on the cart alongside the family silver and personal keepsakes suggests Kehoe staged her as part of his twisted finale, a tableau that reduced his farm, his marriage, and his life to ash all at once. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Nellie's death was the most intimate of Kehoe's many crimes. Had Kehoe blamed Nellie for her illness? Or was the weight of watching her fade, the fear of losing her, what finally snapped something inside of him? And finally, stenciled neatly on a piece of wood and fastened to a fence at the farm, Kehoe left behind one last message. A message he seemed to believe would justify everything he had done. It read, "Criminals are made, not born." It was both confession and accusation, 4 words, tidy, deliberate, and chilling. A man refusing accountability while trying to cloak himself as the inevitable product of a cruel world. His final attempt to shift the blame. To tell the world that society had forged him into a monster, rather than admit that he had chosen violence with his own hand. But here's the truth. Kehoe wasn't the first, and he certainly won't be the last, to grapple with the unfairness of the world. But unlike others who bore the same struggles, he allowed himself to become a monster because of them. He did have a choice. He made a choice. And the people left behind would carry the scars of that choice for the rest of their lives. In the end, the price Andrew Kehoe exacted in vengeance was 45 lives, including his wife and his own. Of those 45, 38 were children. Children whose only connection to Kehoe's grievances was that they existed. And because they existed, they had been offered an education. For that, they were made to pay with their lives. And we could end the story here, but if we do, we leave something vital on the table, the harder conversation about the roots of violence and how grievance festers into vengeance. Because there's no redemption in the story if we don't take its lessons forward. And those lessons matter, maybe now more than ever. They reach far beyond 1927, echoing through every modern act of violence we're still trying to make sense of today. Take, for example, the way neighbors later remembered how odd it seemed that Andrew was letting his crops rot in the field, even as he sank deeper into financial trouble. Everyone saw it, everyone thought it was strange, but no one pressed further. And maybe that was a missed opportunity. Not that a kind word or a bushel of help could have erased the darkness already at work in Kehoe's mind, but the signs were there, a man unraveling, isolating himself, abandoning the very farm that was supposed to sustain him. Sometimes it isn't the spectacular warning signs that we miss, but the quiet ones. The strange behavior we shrug off as someone just being odd. In hindsight, those rotting crops weren't just a waste, they were a signal that something in Kehoe's world had already gone terribly wrong. And in our modern world of disconnection, where many of us don't even know our neighbors anymore, those signs become even harder, if not impossible to spot. Are we rejecting community in the interest of being less overwhelmed, possibly at the risk of our own safety? It's a question that I don't have the answer to. But here's what I do know. In Bath, everyone knew Nellie Kehoe was gravely ill. They knew Andrew was drowning in financial trouble. They saw his crops rotting in the fields, and yet according to the accounts we have, no one stepped in. He was a man visibly going under, and no one threw him a rope. That doesn't excuse his actions, not for a moment, but it does remind us that violence rarely happens in a vacuum. Isolation, silence, and neglect can be the spark that lights the fuse. And let's remember, the people left to tell the story are the people of Bath, the people that Andrew implied had pushed him to this act. There's no one left to interrogate about what happened leading up to Andrew's act, and there's no way to verify that their recounting of his grievances are the whole story. Nothing is more dangerous than a man with nothing left to lose. And by the spring of 1927, Andrew Kehoe was that man. His farm was slipping away, his wife was dying, his seat on the council was gone, and even his constant battles on the school board had dwindled to petty skirmishes. The small victories that had once given him satisfaction were no longer enough. Everywhere he looked, Kehoe saw himself losing ground, financially, socially, politically. And in his mind, those losses weren't just misfortune, they were persecution. So he made the choice that would guarantee he couldn't be ignored anymore. And here's the thing. We've seen this pattern across decades, across tragedies. Grievance, narcissism, fixation. A person convinces themselves that their pain is more important than everyone else's. Violence doesn't hinge only on weapons or opportunity, it hinges on what happens when grievance festers into vengeance. And if we want to stop the cycle, we have to stop collecting grievances, lay them down. That doesn't mean we excuse injustice. It doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to corruption. It means we refuse to let our grievances rot us from the inside. In their place, we choose gratitude, even in the darkest moments. And we refuse to dehumanize people, even the most boneheaded among them. Because loving your neighbor isn't about loving the easy ones. It's about loving everyone and remembering that every life has value. Conflict is inevitable, violence is not. Disagreement is the heartbeat of a healthy society. Hate the opinion if you must. But if you can't humanize the person behind it, then you're the one fueling the hatred that can breed violence. The Bath School bombing remains the deadliest act of school violence to ever occur on U.S. soil. And yet when we talk about curbing violence, we often talk around the issue. We blame the weapons, we blame the lack of mental health care, we blame drugs or disconnection. But here's the very hard truth. Violence grows wherever love has been abandoned. Because love matters. Not romantic love, but the kind that humanizes our neighbors. The kind that demands respect even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or feels unbearable. And that is the love that keeps the rot from taking root. And when it fails, hatred rushes in to fill the void, and that hatred breeds violence. Andrew Kehoe told the world that criminals were made, not born. Maybe. But love, or the lack of it, is what decides whether grievance becomes grace or grievance becomes ruin. The scars in Bath are permanent. The scarred earth where the bodies of Kehoe's victims were laid. The scarred families who lost loved ones. The scars of a community left to carry grief it never asked for. And one little-known scar of that day was what was stolen from the Bath seniors of 1927. Their graduation never happened. The caps, the gowns, the cheers, all silenced in the wake of Kehoe's bombs. Their accomplishment overshadowed by funerals, their joy replaced with mourning. 5 decades later, in 1977, Bath High School did something long overdue. They invited the surviving graduates of the class of 1927 to walk, to finally take the steps across the stage that had been stolen from them 50 years earlier. That moment wasn't just a ceremony, it was a reclamation. A defiant reminder that even in the shadow of horror, life presses forward. And that even half a century later, a community can choose remembrance over silence, survival over despair, and love above all. Because here's the truth. Violence festers when we stop humanizing each other, when we confuse opinions with identity, and start hating people instead of ideas. Bath reminds us that if we want to keep grievances from becoming vengeance, we have to choose love, even for the difficult ones, especially for the difficult ones. Because no matter how righteous you think your cause is, it's never more valuable or more sacred than the life of your neighbor. And that's the conclusion of the Bath School Massacre, the making of America's first school bomber on Crime to Burn.
Why didn't they ever make a sequel to The Boy Who Could Fly? No, I don't know. It just seems like if you liked that movie, you could probably be indoctrinated into a cult easily.
Did you ever see, is it called The Peanut Butter Solution? The guy that he lost his hair and they found this, I don't even remember where they got it. I don't remember that part of the movie, but they got this stuff made out of peanut butter and he put it on his head and it made his hair grow, but then it wouldn't stop growing.
And he had to be stored in a tower where only a knight could rescue him.
Close. They took him, they kidnapped him and
What?
And kept
Who
him.
are they now?
The paintbrush manufacturers. They used his hair to make paintbrushes. You not.
You can't tell me like this and not give me a quaalude before we start.
Yeah, The Peanut Butter Solution. It came out in 1985. Peanut butter is the secret ingredient for magic potions made by two friendly ghosts. 11-year-old Michael loses all his hair when he gets a fright.
I feel like we knew each other in this year.
We did.
And this is what you were doing?
I don't know. Like, as a you know how, like, as a child, you don't realize how effed up some storylines are?
Like any children's movie with David Bowie appearing in it?
Yes.
With his skinny bulge? Now, I like David Bowie in spite of his skinny bulge, not because of it.
Men in leotards have always made me uncomfortable. But we should watch The Peanut Butter Solution. We should see if it's as fucked up as I remember it.
Why do I feel apprehension?
If you have enough to drink, it'll be hilarious.
Everything's hilarious when I have enough to drink.
The new vacuum cleaner comes today.
I'm going to have to test it. Everyone knew what I was talking about when I said that. I was going to need to test it.
I thought you meant clean something.
Yeah, no. Everyone knew better. Except you, somehow. You know me the best, but the rest of the whole universe knew what I meant.
I even put on a bra today.
Front zipper? That's going to take more time. I got the back... even if you put like 4 of those locks on the back of it, like I can do it without looking, just by feel. The front zipper, I might cut you. I don't know. Will the government pay for it?
Ooh, there's an idea. Probably not.
I mean, you just got to word it right. They'll pay for it. Now you know why in that song the microphone smells like a beer.
It doesn't smell like
Come
it.
over here and sniff mine. Tell me what you think. I think I want to solve the puzzle, Pat.
Okay.
He could have just angrily... And then he would have just come away with a different perspective 20 minutes later.
We've just solved all the world's problems. We can be done here.
Let's back it up. Let's put it away. We're done.
Kehoe's fatal error was elevating his ideas...
With his wiener. Those are my robots. What do you... Schmegma.
Ew. I hate that word.
How do you pronounce that correctly? Is it a like a schmegma, or is it just samagma, or is it something else that I can't think about? Oh, look at these crazy eyes.
You were here for the only earthquake I've ever experienced.
But that wasn't like a cataclysmic. That was just like a little burp.
We weren't sure. We thought it was the washing machine, remember?
I thought someone put shoes in the dryer. I was like, who put shoes? Seriously? I was really going to gripe out your parents. Like, who you put your shoes? That was not me being random. This is for your information. Not for the public decimation of my decimatory information.
By the way, I finally reviewed the last 8 TikToks you sent me. I had never heard of the stealth bomber called the Freedom Dorito. And
really?
I'm sad that I've missed out on years of that delightful knowledge.
My goodness, yes. Everyone knows a spicy Freedom Dorito.
Kehoe's twisted genius was turning a farm tool into a
dick.
As Nelly...
You're gonna make it rain. Don't be hollering like that. You're part Cherokee. You're gonna make it rain. I have equipment outside, man. I don't need rain right now, man. I'm too lazy to put it away today.
Okay. If I accidentally make it rain, I'll bring it in.
I'm gonna be pissed. Ferris. My bull's not flying today.
This is gonna be a longer episode than I thought. As Nellie's health collapsed with
ridiculous fervency.
Okay, I can do this without laughing. It's not funny.
Goose Fagua.
Nellie's health is not funny. Doctors couldn't pinpoint the cause of her mysterious illness, and every attempt to ease her sin...
Ease her sin, my child. Come on, I'm in your head now.
And every attempt to ease...
I know why I have anxiety about what I just...
I'm going to cut that out. No one's going to know that you stalked somebody. I'm just kidding.
I'm so skeptical that my eyebrows are trying to divide by 0.
I tried to end on a more upbeat note.
Here's a note for you to end on.
Thanks. The scar of a community left to carry grief it never asked for. That's going to bother you, isn't it? I ended at 4.
I'm being too graceful. I don't know even the f*** you just said, so say it again.
The scars of a community left to carry grief it never asked for. Bitch. There, I ended it without preposition.
Watch this. Watch the master. Excuse me while I have a mild episode. Like I know what day it is. Really, all week long. No idea.
I want to live like that.
And then if you deem it worthy of your time, then perhaps we will endeavor to view the rest of the meager offerings that the DC Universe has decided to bestow upon us. You know, they say you should never go full, but what if that's all you bring to the table?
That's not all you bring to the table. You also bring a massive...
I wasn't talking about me. I was talking about...
Oh.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh, God.
God damn. No one taught you about context clues, did they? So that means you actually believe them.
No, I was trying to play off your joke.
Obviously you're talking about yourself. You're talking about someone that's...
I was trying to...
So the only person in this room is you.
You always talk about yourself and say you're... And I always disagree with you. And I was just trying to play off your joke for once. And I failed. That makes me the one in this situation.
There's no way you're taking my... away from me. You can't appropriate my... No. I put my foot down.
It's all running together.
What day is it?
It's Saturday. At least I hope it's Saturday or I'm supposed to be at work. What's funny is I love the sound of air brakes. I don't know why. Always have. I also love the smell of gasoline.
That's embarrassing. You just drooled a little.
So the title of this bonus episode is, If at first you don't succeed, well, that's what accelerant is for. I don't know. I was going to release this one as a mini episode for the Patreon. The Patreon. For Rachel. This is for Rachel.
This episode has been brought to you by my enormous ball sack. Check it out. There's an imprint on your forehead.
Okay, let's evacuate. Crime to Burn is a production of Crime to Burn, LLC, where we light fires in your brain and not your buildings. All rights reserved. Still spiritually parched after this episode? It's okay, Steve believes in cross-pollination. Here's a trailer for a show we think deserves to infiltrate your ear holes, in a good way. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review before you go. Steve is watching.
Well, Mr. Harris had been living there for some time, and some months had passed where he hadn't paid his rent. They knock, nobody answers, they're concerned. The apartment was locked and the alarm was on. So they go inside, realize something really bad has happened here.
An October afternoon in 2007, Memphis deputies were called to check on a tenant who hadn't paid rent. What should have been a routine welfare check quickly spiraled into something far more disturbing.
You have some blood around the house, you have disheveled paperwork.
The AC was blasting. Dozens of candles were burned to the wick. Air fresheners dripped from outlets. Then they saw a towel jammed under the bedroom door.
So the police go in, and what they encounter is a horrible crime scene.
A man was dead, and within 2 days, multiple arrests were made. On paper, it looked like swift justice. But when I started looking, things didn't add up. And some people were counting on no one noticing.
This was one of the most poorly investigated cases I've ever seen.
Don't have no dealings with them. Don't let them live with you. Don't let them come in your house because they'll rob you blind.
You know, she's got the screaming like, so you're going to sit here and tell us a bold-faced lie? You're going to sit here and lie in our fucking face?
You know, he told me, like, I just didn't do this. And he was so convincing.
That's what worries me, is that I am not ready for this story to be out in the world. Because once that happens, I lose control of the narrative.
This is more than an investigation into a murder. It's about who we choose to believe, what gets ignored, and the fact that looking the other way is still a choice. I'm choosing not to. I'm Stephanie Tinsley, and this is Everything They Missed.
You're asking questions about me for what? That shit was closed years ago.
Well, it's open again.